Hope you all have an amazing time, an amazing new month. What is happening with the situation here in Israel vis a vis our neighbors, first of all, in our own country and our neighbors in Syria and in the territory of Gaza and in Judea and Samaria, what people often call the West Bank. And yeah, how's it all going, especially vis a vis Trump and the plan to end this war and bring various countries closer and add countries to the Abraham Accords, etc. Well, in recent days, there was a lot of talk about Syria possibly joining the Abraham Accords. The only problem with that is that the government of Syria has recently said that it's time to have a jihad against Israel. Not exactly the kind of language one would say if they were seeking to make peace or let alone enter into beyond just a cold peace treaty with a country, right? So yeah, maybe they'll end the war with Israel, but calling for jihad is not the way to do it. So I don't believe the war will end anytime soon between Israel and Syria. Technically, we are still at war since Israel's inception, and Syria attacked Israel, and that war has technically never ended, and it is still ongoing despite the new government or the new dictatorship that rules in Syria. It's not really a government yet, although they've taken the reins of power and the reins of government. It's not really certainly not a duly elected government. That's obviously the case. So, when you think about it that way, what are the prospects of us actually getting? Hello, can I say hi? You want to say hi? A cute dog wanted to say hi and then jumped away. The government of Syria and the government of Israel have a long way to go before we can be like, oh yeah, we're all making peace, right? Why? Well, because the government of Syria is run by a bunch of terrorists, and the fact that the leader of that terrorist gang, Mr. Al Shara, formerly known as Mr. Al Jalani or whatever his name was, Mr. Jalani, which is a derivative of the name Golani or Golan, just because he puts on the suit and visits the White House, which he did, and visited the president in France, and visited all these other, high elite type people in Qatar, etc., doesn't make him not a terrorist. He's still 100% a terrorist at heart. You got to remember, just a few years ago, his forces were literally shooting at Americans in Syria. And now, Americans in Syria are training his forces. Like, it's like what we did with Osama bin Laden, but backwards, right? Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan, when he was a Mujahideen fighting against the Soviets, the Mujahideen were being trained by the CIA. This is not a secret or anything. This is well documented and well known. You can read about it anywhere you want. And then, of course, years later, turned his skills against America. No surprise there. This happens all the time. In fact, it happened so often. Just last week, if you remember what happened in Washington, D.C., when there was an Afghan guy who shot two American servicemen, killed at least one of them. I think the other one may still be alive. I hope so. But I know they killed at least one of them. What happened there? Hey, doggy. Hello there. First like, yes, hey, thank you very much for liking it. Also, if you wouldn't mind, subscribe, please. I really appreciate it. I do have a tiny channel and would love to see more people, reached by my messaging, my words here, my videos. Trump, right, in the White House last week, and two servicemen get killed by this Afghan guy who's been in the U.S. since like 2021, 2022. Why was he in the U.S.? He was in the U.S. because he had helped American forces when we were in Afghanistan. He didn't just help, he was part of a very special unit, and that unit was, of course, trained by the CIA. And I'm not talking about he was just like a translator. No. He was part of a counterterrorism unit. So he had very specialized training, and he was very capable of basically testing the wire. And that's exactly what his attack was when he attacked those two servicemen near the White House last week. He wanted to see what the reaction, well, him and whoever sent him, wanted to see what the reaction would be when servicemen near the White House are attacked. He didn't just attack them because he's some crazy jihadi. Like, yes, he is a crazy jihadi. Yes, somebody put him up to it. Maybe they paid him. Maybe they had some other kind of leverage over him to make him do it. Whatever it is, he did those attacks to test the wire. And what does it mean to test the wire? It means to test the perimeter of security around the White House and to test what the reaction would be, to test what the outcry would be, to test what the pros and cons, like the supporters of the government and the detractors of the government, what their messaging would be, all those things. Many things get tested in this situation. So that wasn't a random attack at all, right? At the same time, you have situations like we had last week in, it was like Friday or Thursday or Friday or Saturday, something like that, over the weekend, basically, here in Israel, in the town of Beit Jin in Syria. You had Israelis go into Syria, into that, servicemen who were serving up, obviously reservists, who went into that town, and they proceeded to extract two wanted people, who had attacked Israel multiple times, fired rockets, and they were holed up in a building, armed and refusing to surrender. The Israeli engineers basically forced them to get out, and then when they came out with their hands up, whatever. Sorry, that was the people in Syria. Sorry, they were arrested in their beds, and then when the soldiers were taking them out to the Humvees to get them back to Israel, the Israeli soldiers came under a lot of attack. About, I think, half a dozen or so Israeli soldiers and commanders were wounded in that attack from, gunfire, basically, right? And Israel, obviously eliminated some of the terrorists who were attacking them, but it was still seen as, a big problematic operation because of the chaos that ensued, after they arrested those two men who were suspected terrorists who had, again, attacked Israel from Syria, meaning they launched rockets, they've done other things to attack Israel from Syria, and they were part of a terrorist network there. So Israel managed to successfully disrupt some aspects of that network, at least temporarily, and arrest those two men and bring them to Israel to face justice, meaning a trial and imprisonment at worst, because we don't execute people who are already in captivity, who are have undergone all that system, because we don't have a system like of a death penalty for even terrorists, right? Yes, Israel once executed a person named Adolf Eichmann, who was the architect of the final solution that literally killed millions of Jews in the Holocaust. Yes, he's the one exception to that case, where Israel just said, in this case, we can apply the death sentence because the guy deserves it, right? And in another case, with Mr. John Demjanjuk, he was also sentenced to death, and he was not executed in the end because of appeals, etc. So that's that. And inside of Israel, and in the what people call the Shtachim here in Israel, which means the territories, which talks about Judea and Samaria, or as you know, the West Bank. If you're not familiar with this land, you've probably heard of the term the West Bank, which is just an invented name, right, to refer to the West Bank of the Jordan River, which is inside Judea and Samaria, which is the name of that land. Anyway, there's a place there where two terrorists, I think they were brothers, they might not have been, either way, two jihadis, whether they're related or not, were, again, people who have been suspected of carrying out multiple attacks. Not just like, oh, we think they once carried a gun somewhere illegally. No, these are people who carried out multiple attacks. We say suspected for legal reasons, right? Because we have a judicial system here. And we send in soldiers to arrest them, right? Because they're in areas where the Palestinians have security control. So we have to send in our soldiers. We can't just send in like cops or something unless it's like an anti-terrorism unit or something like that. And as we went in, these two men were inside of a building. And from what I read, they're not brothers, if I remember the names correctly. But I don't want to mispronounce them, so I'll save you the bearing of my pronunciation. They were in a building, holed up with weapons. Free, you support whom? I support Israel, and I support Palestinians to have actual freedom. Right now, they don't get freedom from Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. They are oppressed by them, right? I want them to actually have the ability to select real leaders who actually want peace. Right now, they're just literally being oppressed by their own leaders because they've chosen very poorly in choosing Hamas to lead them in Gaza 20 years ago. And that's a crime that they haven't been able to vote since then. But hey, what'd you expect? You could put a bunch of Hamasniks in charge. You think you're going to get votes every year? Not going to happen. And they don't have equal rights among men and women and races and religions and sexual orientations and ethnicities and all this other stuff. They don't treat people equally there. If you think they do, you're crazy, right? So I want them to have those actual freedoms like we have here in Israel, but they don't have that because their leaders don't want peace. Yeah. So it's not yeah, exactly. Thank you. I support God's kingdom. Yeah, man, I support God's kingdom too. No problem. I support people, right? I want people to be free and safe and healthy and prosperous and happy. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of that in a world full of war and violence and all the misery that creates and other things that create misery. But anyway, these two guys who surrendered themselves after resisting arrest for a long time and being forced out by the Corps of Engineers, because the Israeli Army Corps of Engineers is quite good on Dasa. Right? They're very, very good at getting people out or into situations or out of situations. And they know what they're doing. They're very good at demolitions, for example. They're very good at making sure people have no choice but to do what the army says. And so these guys surrendered, came out of their building, or they were still technically under the pillars or whatever, but they came out from where they were hiding, took their shirts off to show that they weren't armed or whatever, raised their hands, and then for whatever reason, still under investigation, the Israeli army, two of the soldiers shot them. One or two, anyway, either one soldier or two soldiers, I don't know how many, but those two suspects are now dead. And everyone's saying, oh, it's a war crime, and the Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas said, oh, it's a war crime. Here's the thing. Should they have been shot? The investigation will determine whether or not it was justified. Second of all, even if it wasn't justified, and I'm not justifying killing innocent people here, they weren't innocent people. These were terror suspects in a field of combat who were resisting arrest. That makes them legitimate targets. Yes, technically, if they raised their hands and said, we surrender, you're not supposed to shoot them. That's true. But, things happen in the field of war, right? It's not a pleasant business. It's an ugly business. Mistakes happen. And even if they weren't killed by mistake, even if they were killed on purpose by those soldiers, all I can say is, if you are an active threat and you're in a field of combat and there were soldiers who pursued you and you've been resisting their commands, and then somebody gets a bit hot and jealous and shoots you, don't tell me that was a surprise, right? Like, I don't wish death upon anybody. I really don't. But that's not a surprise. And certainly not a war crime to shoot two terror suspects in an active field of combat. Sorry, Mr. Mahmoud Abbas, but you are wrong about that. You were just 100% wrong. There was literally nothing war crime about it. To call it that is absurd. And to have the head of the Palestinian Authority call it that, when he's quite literally a war criminal who pays people to slay Jews and Israelis, and anybody in Israel, by the way, because it doesn't matter even if you're Israeli or not. If you're a terrorist and you come over here, like as a terrorist, whether you're affiliated with a terrorist group or not, you could be a lone wolf. If you come into Israel, and even in the West Bank, and you kill any number of people who either have Israeli ID or who have traveled to Israel or who are living and working in Israel, right, or just here for whatever reason, if you go to prison, you also get paid money, like extra. And if you die, you get paid even more. Your family gets paid money. Not only do they get paid money, they get paid money forever. They get put on the books of families of heroes and martyrs, as they call them, right? Terrorists and scumbags, murderers. And they get paid some money every month for the rest of their lives. Ad infinitum. There is no date upon which they will stop receiving that money. And we recently saw reports a few months ago, and I told you it was BS. They saw reports, they published reports that said, oh yeah, no, Mahmoud Abbas has agreed to stop paying terrorists, and he's going to, stop doing the paper slave program. Turns out he didn't do that at all, which is exactly what I told you. I told you he's not stopping. He's going to continue to pay them, And the world was like, no, no, what are you talking about? You're crazy. You don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I was right once again. Why? Because I know this shit. Okay, and it is a world of shit. And if you don't know that, wake up. Um, take care of yourself. Yeah, we should all take care of ourselves. So it turns out now there's been another report that's been published that says exactly that. It demonstrates that there is not just a little bit of evidence that he just used some loopholes and just only like temporarily stopped payments for a few families. He did exactly what I said he would do. He rerouted the payment structure so that he can continue to pay them the exact same amount of money, but just in a different way. That's it. They just have a different routing, so the money moves in a different way. You're not fooling anybody, Mahmoud Abbas. You're a terrorist scumbag. You deserve 2 to the head. That's all I got to say about that. And he's a terrorist. He's not just a person. He's the leader of the terrorist organization called the Palestinian Authority. They are not a peace negotiating partner, right? And neither is the organization that is currently oppressing the people in Gaza known as Hamas. They're scumbags, and they need to be ended, right? We're talking about really violent jihadi scumbags. They need to be ended, right? And anybody who wants to pretend like, oh, well, there's the Trump peace plan. It's peace now. No, it's not peace. It's nothing remotely close to peace. We are still in an active state of war. We still have Israelis fighting in Gaza every day, right? Defending us on the yellow line, right? Making sure that the scumbags in Gaza do not escape from the tunnels that are inside of the yellow line where they should not be. And the fact that they're there is a fucking war crime. It's a violation of the ceasefire. And they've tried to flee. And those who tried to flee have been arrested or eliminated. And there's still possibly hundreds of people under there, under those tunnels. We don't know yet how many people are still under there because they haven't all been cleared out. Israel has made some ground in clearing out more of those people. The exact number, I'm not sure of because really nobody's sure of that yet. And we don't know if we'll actually ever know the entire number. Tons doesn't matter though. But the fact is, Israel is still very much in a state of war. And just because it's a little bit quieter now these days, doesn't mean anything. Like Iran is rearming like crazy, doing everything they can to bring about another round of fighting between Israel and Iran ASAP, because that is an important way for them to distract from the problems that they are causing and facing. And Hezbollah, one of their proxies, is doing the exact same thing. And so are the Houthis. And so are Hamas. They're all biding their time to attack us again. Not a single one of them intends to stop fighting us. And if you think they do, you don't understand what they're doing. You're missing very big basic facts. So don't be fooled. Don't just believe that just because they say, oh yeah, the fighting's over, it means it's over. No, there's a temporary ceasefire happening that is, at the moment seeing a little bit less fighting between the sides, but the war is far from over. Hate to break it to you. We're not going to have peace anytime soon. This war is going to linger on for a while, right? And it's going to get uglier before it gets better. And that sucks because it means more people are going to die, especially innocent people. That's the part that sucks about it the most. I wish it didn't happen. I certainly wish our people didn't die just as much and more than I wish that our enemies' people didn't die. And yeah, I say and more because I value our people more than than theirs. Why? By how much? Well, look, we're all human beings. If you don't side with your own people, there's something wrong with you, right? Yes, I side with all people. I want all people to survive, but I want my people to survive. And that means sometimes, well, if more of them have to go to God before than us, well, so be it. That's war. They started the war. We're going to end it. That's all Israel ever does. We end wars, right? But the problem is we're not allowed to end them fully because international pressure bars us from doing that. So that's the status update for now. Basically, not much has really changed. If anything, the situation has gotten more delicate, more tense, and we are likely to see more fighting rather than less fighting in the coming months ahead. I wish I had a better, more positive, optimistic outlook for you, but that is the reality. And to pretend that it's better than it is does not help the situation. If you actually care about Palestinians, you should actually want the Hamas to stop oppressing them. You should actually want the Hamas to surrender, like they've already agreed to do in writing, and have since multiple times said they refuse to do. So you should be pressuring everybody that you possibly can, if you actually care about the Palestinians, to tell the Hamas to get the hell out of the way, because they are the stumbling block in this local fight, just like the Islamic Republic of Iran is led by an oppressive government that is the stumbling block to greater peace in the region and throughout the world. Okay, that's going to do it for now, folks. Hope you all do well. Peace and shalom from Israel. Take care.